Okay, so tonight we are going to introduce three-tier architecture. And so we got a slide here just to discuss the concept of what is three-tier architecture. So it's a client-server architecture in which we separate the user interface and business processes and data storage. We separate them out, and we can maintain and develop the modules on separate platforms effectively. So we're dividing up. What else?
It's missing an image. I wonder if that didn't come through. Is the image shown on yours?
Hold on. It is. Let me try it online. That's what I get for trying to be fancy.
Was the only image right?
This thing with the displays again.
Carrie, the camera picked that up really well.
Say that again.
Any Rubik's Cube clacking, the camera tends to pick up really well.
Hey. Okay, there we go.
Somebody has to.
Yeah, Andrew was doing that last week or something like that. I was just. He was like, oh, sorry.
Audie says I have to do that every time. It's bizarre, right? I can't.
Perfect.
Okay. Image. There we go. Alright. So, the architecture being divided the way it does allows us to, so that if any one of the three tiers needs to be upgraded or replaced, we can do that independently, basically here. So, we have the client tier, the business logic tier, and then the database tier. So your client tier is going to be your user interface, then your business logic tier is going to be your service, effectively, and then the database tier will be data. So, and this is how we structure them here in CAPS with your MVC project, your service project, and your database. All right. All right. So let's look at the presentation tier a little more deeply. It's the topmost level of application, and will commonly have the most direct interaction with the user. So this is how your user perceives your project, effectively. All right. We can implement the MVC structure. It doesn't have to, but that's the way we're doing them here in CAPS now. So that's why we spent all last week learning about MVC. This is also the tier that will handle the routing for your task and request to your other layers. And it translates the results and responses to your user. So all the stuff that our MVC projects are doing, this is the tier where that occurs. All right. Do you have any questions about the presentation tier? It's kind of obvious with that part. All right. Now the business logic tier. This is also referred to as the middle tier, and it consists of your business and data roles, and should house your application functionality. And it's accessed initially by your presentation tier, and then it handles the business logic. So this is where you can deal with your validations, calculations, things like that. And it passes the data down to your data tier. Okay. So again, this is where what we refer to as our service layer, we will be setting up as an external service, but it can be accessed internally as well. Okay. So finally, we have our data tier, and this is the tier that houses your database servers. So this is where all your information is stored, managed, retrieved, and it's independent of your application servers and business logic. So it's going to sit on its own server. It handles the storage and querying of your application, and should have very tight permissions so that only the middle layer can securely communicate back and forth. So that'll give you some added security. And one other thing that having it separated is that like you can use like test data early on, like if you have something set up before you have real data, and then having the layers separated into your 3 tiers will make it easy to just bump into a new data source, and you don't have to worry about having to reconfigure everything to manage. Okay? So, do y'all have questions about any of the 3 tiers? Yeah, presentation tier, business logic tier, data tier. Good with this? Yes.
This is the same as like
MVC, our MVC project would represent the first tier of the 3-tier architecture.
But the model then, isn't that the same as the database?
Your model reflects the database in MVC, and so I can understand why that is a little bit associated, but it's not quite the same thing. It's a reflection of it. It's not your actual data. All right, like your models that you set up, they create the structure of the information that you're keeping, but the data tier is literally like your database.
Okay, and that's basically auto-generated if you're using code first.
For an entity framework, yeah. All right, good deal. We're gonna take all the stuff that we did last week and move it into 3-tier tonight. So maybe it'll make it a little more clear to you about that. All right. So let's talk about some benefits of doing a 3-tier architecture. Your resource allocation is more flexible, so you can improve network performance. If you've got your SQL server is managing all your database stuff, and then your whatever server is dealing with your service can focus on that, and it's only having to do the traffic back and forth between the database here and then your front end on the other side. And then you have another server, maybe, managing your MVC project. It can focus entirely on that. So your middle tier is doing all your communication, and then your other ends can handle the functionality that they're working on. So it just gives you it allows each one of your servers to focus on whatever tier they're actually working on. So it's easier to develop because you can do it in parallel. You can have one guy over here working on the service layer, and then another lady over on the other side who is dealing with your MVC project, and then later on they can match up and get everything functioning together, but they can work independently, and we don't have to worry about our Git conflicts because they're working in entirely separate projects on different files. So physically separating the tiers can help you improve your security, so we can lock down the information, only have access to our database from our service, so that protects from other users. And then if we separate the other 2 servers, you can also restrict who's accessing your service as well. So this improves the robustness of our security systems. All right, and it's also more scalable because of dividing everything out. It allows you to scale easier. The drawbacks, it's a little more time consuming to set up, and that can also mean that it's costly. And it's more complex, obviously. It's real easy when everything's all in the same project to just access everything and not have to worry about as many references and making sure all of your references are correct and updated and things like that. But it's not so hard to do it, and I think that generally unless you're doing like a very small project, that you don't really care if anybody kind of hacks into because it's not holding anything. And I don't think we work on projects like that. So in any case, we do still use this architecture, even though it's more complex. But all right. Yep. So, do we have questions at all about 3-tier architecture? I thought I was kidding when I told you we were going to be out here because of this bad weather. All right, let's get in and actually show what this looks like in a project, since I just breezed right through all of my slides. All right, and we've been playing with some stuff, some projects already. So you guys have been building your address book, and we're going to keep working with the projects that you've done. I think I actually created, I might have worked on my test project already. So I'm going to open up my vehicles project. And if you see what I've done here, I've got 3 separate projects in one solution, okay? I think we talked about this a little bit the first night, but whenever you're creating a new project, you create the project and it comes with it creates a solution when you create the new project, but you can put multiple projects inside of a solution. So when we do the 3-tier architecture, we're going to set up 3 separate projects. And I've already done this one, so I will, let me open another one. I basically just brought everything in, and I kind of faked some stuff out to get it to work. But this was originally my vehicles project, which is the MVC project. So you guys have already created an address book that was an MVC project, correct? Y'all still have that, hopefully. Don't get rid of any of your stuff. All right. So we have the project, and it has. This is my service. Okay. Sorry. Over in my controller, I have the add vehicle, display vehicles, search, and show details, right? And so once you have this project created, which you guys already do, what you can do is you can go here and you can go File, Add, Existing Project, and you can pull in your service project that you already had. So I've already done mine, but I'm going to show you what it would look like. I can go in here to the vehicle service and grab that project and just add that into the same solution where your MVC project is. Okay, so that's fairly simple to do, and then your service will already be in there with your MVC project. And then when you open them, you can see them both. All right. Now, the other project that I've created is the model project. As we said, the model reflects what's in our database. So what I've done here, remember last week when we created your address book and we set up a contact, we created a model for your contact and then also a model for your address book. I'm sorry, the address inside your MVC project. Then we did the exact same thing in your service project, right? They should have been similar at least, so that each one of those projects could reference that information, that class, okay? What I've done here is I have created a models project, and I've got my vehicle and person classes inside of that model project. Now, I've still got them decorated with the data contracts and the data members and things like that, so that when we pass them through with our service, it'll still understand them. But what I can do is I can go here into my vehicle service, and I no longer have those classes set up in my interface. Do you remember how I had the data contract and stuff down here in the interface initially? That's where it was set up. I've removed them and just moved them over into the models project, okay? But I still need to access them in my service project. So in order to do that, what I have to do is go to references, and you can go add reference. And then if you'll notice, I've selected vehicles model, okay? And that adds a reference in my service project so that I can access those models in the model project. Okay. And then you have to do the exact same thing in the vehicles project. You go here and add a reference. Add reference to vehicles model. Okay. Now both of those projects are accessing the exact same model, and that way you don't have to map them. So they're actually talking about the exact same type of object. Okay. Now, in order to create the model, all I did was created a new, I went into File, New Project, and just did a class library and said, these are vehicles.model. And that way we have, be careful when you're naming these if you're adding one that already exists. So like if you have your address book and maybe you have, if you already have address book and a models folder, and then you add address book.models, it'll get your namespaces mixed up. So just call it model if you already have if you name it the same as your MVC project. Okay, so be cautious about that. All right. Now,
Oh, one last thing, when
Yeah.
you did that, this is something I've just tripped up on before. When you're in that, it's gonna, at the bottom, there's a drop down and it's asking you where do you wanna add this project to? And by default, it's gonna say create a new solution. And you don't wanna create a new solution, you wanna add it
Oh,
to
sorry.
vehicles, so.
yeah, here I'll show that. Do new project and class library, and yeah, choose the add to solution there. Thank you.
Could have we done this like we created a new solution, we just added it later?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Like if we created a new solution altogether and then we could have just added it in the like.
Sure. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can pull in any of your
Yeah,
projects.
as a reference and
Mhm.
add probably the reference it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, I also have to reference this service inside my vehicles table. So we're going to bring this. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Didn't I? Also, what? Oh, was that your phone? Okay. Yeah, in my vehicles project. So, what I would do is I go here to service references, and I right click and go add service reference. And if you click on discover, if it's in there in your project, it'll find it. If it's not, you can run it and get the address for it and then add it that way. But if it's inside your project,
If
it's,
it'll build, it'll find it.
I'm sorry?
So if it'll build, it will find it.
Okay. All right. And then down here, we're just going to name it. And I named my vehicle service just so that I knew that this was the reference to it. So once you do that, now you'll have a reference to that actual service. And you wanted to say something? Okay. You had that look like you wanted to add something. So. Okay. So now our MVC project can access what's in the service. So.
But just to clarify, so like what you've done and what the difference is, so like she added a reference to the model the first go around, and there's nothing special about that, that's just a C# reference. But the reason that the service reference is different is because what she's actually doing is creating a client within the MVC project. It's now a client to that service. So all of the stuff that's generated when you create the service reference, like if she has the drop down and then drops down again, it's generated all this stuff, right? These aren't files you've created. You didn't do any of this. Visual Studio did all of that. And all of this code is so that you can easily connect to that service and still use like the C# classes and methods and stuff. Use it as though it's not going over a wire that has no idea what C# is. So that's kind of what she's doing right there, is creating a client, and it's a little different than the first reference to the model.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so so we've added this reference to our MVC project, and now if we want to actually use the project, what we have to do is we have to create an instance of our service client. So I've just created that here. I've said var service equals new vehicle service client. Okay, and when we looked at the reference, it shows you where the constructor is for that client. So now that I keep switching files, sorry. I don't mean to do that. Huh?
Can you make it big?
Yes. Yes, of course. There you go. Alright. So I've created my service object, and now I can access all of those public methods that are in the service. So I can say svc.add vehicle. Alright. Now here, if I hover over can y'all see that? I know it's tiny. It says class vehicles.model.vehicle. Okay, so this is letting it know I'm talking about the class that is defined down here in model, and this makes it a lot easier when you're passing your information back and forth, because those the data contracts that you set up, you can pass those objects back and forth, but if you access them in your MVC project as the class that's in your service, first of all, it's a little bit lengthy, but also it can get confused if you have them defined both places, like in your if you have them defined in the service and then you've also set up that class inside your MVC project. It gets real hard to tell which one you're talking about, basically. So
If the objects are named the same, it'll error, it'll give ambiguous reference.
Right.
It just doesn't know.
exactly. And then you can just use the ones that are in the service, but it comes with a lot of bulk when it passes the information through. So separating the model out into its own project and then referencing that project from both sides cuts in on a lot of the fluff. And so that way when you're referencing these, so what you're going to have to do, if you pull all this information in and set this up correctly in your projects, it's going to be kind of a pain, just so you know. But what you need to do is then I would remove the other delete the objects or just move them out into your other file. But you're going to have to go back and fix everywhere you use those other objects. You have to fix the reference to it and make sure that you're using the correct one. And that includes, and this one's the hard one to find, all of your views, because if you've already generated your views and you're using those models, you have to go in and find all of the places where you reference the model. So if you'd rather just start fresh, you can do that too. But it's your call, whichever way you would rather do it. I think it's kind of a good learning tool to go in and fix all that stuff, just because you really get to see where it's referenced and things like that. So, in any case, so here we have our MVC project consuming our service, and then they're both accessing that model project, and I faked out the service. I didn't make it actually go do any of the database stuff. I just made it generate some fake stuff. But it'll actually move the stuff through. You can watch, there's my breakpoint. If I go try to add a vehicle, we can just pause it in a breakpoint and so you add vehicle, there's my VIN. And hit create. And then when we pause here, you can see our vehicle object. And you drop it down, and you see our make is Ford. Our ID is nothing yet because we haven't generated it. Ford Fairlane, there's our VIN, and there's the year. If we expand our owner, see Shannon Marks. And so all of that data is there. So presumably here in my service, I would connect this into a database and actually insert that record into the data. Okay? We're not going to do anything with it though. So I'll just stop right there.
Can we see before it gets can we put a breakpoint in MVC to see?
It won't let us do that. You can't see all the data come through there. No, I mean You want it in the MVC project?
Yeah, just to symbolize
Here?
like pre-wired, yeah.
There.
Yeah, so
In
like,
post?
this is, yeah.
Okay. All right.
So when the form submits, it's gonna submit to a post or a method called add vehicle that's accepting a method of HTTP post, right?
Correct.
And this is in our MVC project. We have yet to touch the surface, right? So vehicle's there, everything's there. Then she creates an instance of the service client, right? So we have var service equals new vehicle service client. And that's creating the connection. Now you are a client to that service. So now you can access its methods that have been set up in the service contract. So service.addVehicle is the method that touches the service, and that's where the vehicle gets passed over. So like to draw the picture, that's why you did all of the data contracts and the data members and all that stuff, is simply so when it does go across the wire, and this is literal, it loses all understanding of C#. There's no C# when it's crossing that wire. The data members and data contract, all that stuff that you've put, all that work you put in, is simply so it can get from MVC to service. So it makes the connection. And that to say, the reason being that the MVC project doesn't have to be C#. It could be an API. It could be PHP. It could be Python. That's the beauty of the wire not being coupled to some language. It's a standard, so you can use other things to communicate with it. So just wanted to bring that point home.
Pretty good. All right. So tonight, what you guys are going to do is take all of your projects that you've done and add them together and smush it into one big solution that has your service and your MVC project, and then also a separate model layer. Okay. So I don't think that's what the slide says, though. I think I overwrote the slide accidentally. Unless you,
Add your existing service project.
yeah, I was.
Done.
All right. So you can cut that camera off now.